My daughter-in-law told me to pack a bag and get out of my own house before Friday. Not because I'd done anything wrong, because her parents were coming and she had decided they were taking my bedroom. Then she slid her phone across the table and showed me the RV park she'd picked for me. I looked at my son, Adam. He didn't defend me. He just said, "Dad, it's only 6 weeks." That hurt more than anything Brooke said, because in that moment I realized this wasn't a request. It was a plan they had made without me. And before I could answer, something happened at my front door that proved they'd been planning this longer than I knew. The knock came before I could answer. Brooke glanced toward the front hall like she already knew who it was. I opened the door and found a delivery driver standing beside 2 large hard-sided travel cases and a taped storage box. Each label had the same names printed across the top. Frank and Diane Mercer, Brooke's parents. Underneath their names was my address. The driver checked his handheld screen. "These can go just inside." Right before I could answer, Brooke stepped around me. "Yes, put them by the stairs." I looked at her. "When did your parents start sending things here?" She didn't even hesitate. "A few days ago. They didn't want to travel with everything." "You gave them my address, Robert. They're staying here." There it was again. Not might stay. Not if I was comfortable with it. "They're staying here." The driver looked between us, suddenly interested in the floor. I signed for the shipment, had him leave everything in the entryway, and closed the door. Adam was still at the table. I pointed at the cases. "Did you know about those?" He leaned back in his chair. "I knew they were shipping a few things. And you didn't think to mention it." Brooke let out a breath through her nose. "Why does every small thing have to become a hearing? Because small things usually don't arrive with luggage tags." She folded her arms. "My mother can't handle those stairs every day. You know that. You have the only bedroom down here with a full bath. This is the practical solution. For you. For everybody." "No," I said. "A solution for everybody usually includes..." "Everybody." Adam shifted in his chair. "Dad, nobody's trying to disrespect you." I looked at the cases again. "Then stop making decisions that require my permission before you have it." Nobody answered that. When Adam and Brooke moved in, the arrangement had been simple. Their new house was supposed to be finished in 10 or 12 weeks. They could stay with me, save some money, and keep their furniture in storage until the place was ready. I didn't charge them rent. I didn't want rent. He was my son. The first night they moved in, I handed Adam a spare key and told him, "Your family. You don't need to knock." At the time, I meant trust. Looking at those suitcases in my entryway, I started wondering what they thought it meant. The first few weeks had been easy enough. Then Brooke started taking work calls in my den because the light was better there. After that, she moved a few things in the kitchen because her system made more sense. Small stuff. Nothing worth turning into a family fight. Whenever I mentioned it to Adam, he gave me the same answer. "It's temporary, Dad." So I let temporary cover a lot. That morning, I stopped. "Adam," I said, "come outside with me?" Brooke looked up. "We're in the middle of something." "No," I said. "You are." Adam followed me through the back door. The lake was flat and gray under the morning sky. I walked to the end of the small deck and waited until the door shut behind us. Then I asked him one question. "What's the move-in date on your house?" His face changed. "Not much. Just enough." He shoved his hands into his pockets. "Why?" "Because I asked." He stared past me toward the water. "The schedule slipped. How far we're working through it, that wasn't my question." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Maybe late September." I turned fully toward him. "You told me you'd be out in July." "I know. And when did you find out September was more realistic?" He didn't answer. That silence felt familiar now. "Adam, about 3 weeks ago." For a second, all I heard was a boat motor somewhere across the lake. 3 weeks. Brooke had picked an RV park. Her parents had already shipped belongings to my house. And my son had known for 3 weeks that he and his wife were not leaving when they said they would. "You were going to tell me when we were waiting to see if the contractor could make up time." He looked irritated then, which almost made me laugh. "Dad, construction changes. You know that?" I did know that. I had spent most of my adult life around job sites. Delays happened. What did not happen by accident was hiding one. Show me the schedule. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone and opened an email from the builder. The revised timeline was right there. Interior completion pushed back. Final inspections later. Expected occupancy near the end of September, possibly early October. The email was dated 22 days earlier. I handed the phone back. So you knew? Yes. Brooke knew. Yes. And while both of you knew you might be here another 2 or 3 months, she invited her parents to stay here too. Adam's jaw tightened. She wanted them to visit. That isn't what I asked. He looked down at the deck boards. I already had my answer. I let that sit between us. So what was the plan after July? Adam's answer came too quickly. We figured we'd work it out. With who? He looked back toward the house. That was the moment the delay stopped sounding like a construction problem. A delay was something that happened to them. This was a decision they had made about me. The RV park wasn't the problem. The bedroom wasn't even the biggest problem anymore. They had known their original plan was gone, and instead of asking me what happened next, they had quietly made a new one. Around my house, around my space, around me. I looked through the glass door at Brooke moving her parents' cases away from the entryway, as if they already belonged there. Then, one thought settled in harder than the rest. If they had planned this much without telling me, I needed to know what else they had already decided. Adam stayed on the deck after I went back inside. Brooke had already carried one of her parents' cases toward the downstairs hall. The other sat beside the coat rack, like it had been there for weeks. She looked at me. So what did you talk to Adam? I did. And I'm not leaving my bedroom. Her expression tightened. But only for a second. Then she gave me the same look people use when they think time will fix your attitude for them. We'll talk later. No, I said. We just did. I walked past her and went into my den. On the bottom shelf of the filing cabinet was a folder with the paperwork from when Adam and Brooke moved in. Nothing complicated. Just a simple written agreement we had all looked over together. Temporary stay. No rent. Expected move-out tied to completion of their house. I found the page with the original date circled, July. I sat there staring at it. The paper itself did not surprise me. What surprised me was how badly I needed to see it. For 3 weeks, Adam and Brooke had known that date no longer meant anything. Yet neither of them had come to me and said, "Dad, we have a problem." They had skipped the asking part. I had not written the agreement because I distrusted them. I had written it because construction schedules move. People forget conversations. And clear dates keep temporary arrangements from quietly becoming permanent ones. Adam had even joked when he signed it that I ran my house like a job site. At the time, we all understood what it meant. They had a place to land while their house was finished. I still had my home. Nobody had promised more. I put the page on the desk and thought about the last month. Brooke taking calls from my den had not mattered much. Neither had the groceries showing up in cabinets I normally used. Even the way she sometimes answered delivery drivers before I could had seemed irritating rather than important. Individually, none of it deserved a fight. Together, it looked different now. Every time I stepped aside without saying anything, the next decision had come a little easier for her. That bothered me more than the delay. Later that afternoon, Adam found me in the garage. He leaned against my workbench while I sorted a box of electrical fittings I had been meaning to organize for months. "Dad, can we not make this bigger than it is?" I kept sorting. "How big is it?" He sighed. "You know what I mean." "No." "Tell me." He looked toward the open garage door. "The house is delayed. Brooke's parents already booked flights. Diane needs the downstairs room. We're all trying to get through a few bad weeks. You keep saying we," I said. "But every solution seems to require something from me." He looked away. "You're so busy trying to make this easier for everybody that you don't hear what you're asking." He rubbed both hands over his face. "I'm tired, Dad." "So am I. We can split the difference." "There is no difference to split. Maybe you stay at the campground for 2 weeks, then her parents move upstairs after that." I stopped sorting. Why am I the person every version of this plan removes? Adam opened his mouth, then closed it. That silence told me more than an argument would have. He finally said, "Because you're easier about things." I stared at him. He realized how it sounded the second the words left his mouth. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant, Dad. You're saying Brooke will fight you, so you came to me because I won't." He looked down. "I'm saying you understand." There it was. Not respect, not fairness. Convenience. He had turned my patience into a resource he could spend whenever his marriage got uncomfortable. I wish I could say I had no part in creating that, but I did. For years, whenever Adam called with a problem, I tried to make the problem smaller. Car trouble, moving costs, a bad landlord, a wedding bill that ran higher than expected. I helped because I could. After his mother died, I probably helped even faster. Somewhere along the way, I stopped asking whether helping was actually helping. The worst part was that a small piece of me still wanted to make it easy for him. That instinct did not disappear just because I finally saw what it had become. That night, after the house went quiet, I opened the RV park website Brooke had shown me. Cabins, gravel pads, picnic tables, lake access. It looked perfectly fine. For about 5 minutes. I almost convinced myself that 6 weeks away might be easier. I could fish, read, let Adam and Brooke deal with her parents. No arguments, no tension in the kitchen. Then I imagined coming back at the end of summer and finding a new set of assumptions waiting for me. Maybe Brooke would have rearranged more rooms. Maybe Adam would need another month. Maybe there would be another reason I should understand. The campground was not the real decision. The real decision was whether I was willing to keep teaching them that my answer could be changed if they applied enough pressure. The next morning, I came downstairs and found fresh sheets stacked outside my bedroom. Brooke was carrying a lamp from the den. "Where are you taking that?" "Your room. Mom likes to read at night." I stepped in front of her. "Put it back." She stared at me. "Robert, we cannot keep having the same conversation. Then stop repeating the same behavior." Her jaw tightened. "Their flight is Friday. We don't have time for this." "You do. You have plenty of time to book them somewhere else." She laughed once. "A hotel for 6 weeks. Do you know what that costs?" "Yes. And you're okay with making Adam pay that just because you won't be flexible?" I looked at her. There it was again. If I said no, I was costing Adam money. If I stayed, I was reasonable. If I left, I was generous. Every option worked as long as I was the one absorbing it. I'm not discussing my bedroom again. I moved the lamp back into the den. Brooke watched me do it. But she said nothing. That afternoon, I went into town for a few hours. When I came back, the house was quiet. Adam's truck was gone. Brooke's car was in the driveway. I walked downstairs and stopped at my bedroom door. It was open. A cardboard moving box sat on the bench at the foot of my bed. 2 of my shirts were folded inside it. Beside them were my shaving kit, a stack of books from the nightstand, and the framed photo of my wife that had been there for years. For a few seconds, I just stood there. Then Brooke appeared in the hallway, carrying another empty box. "Oh, good," she said. "I was going to ask which clothes you wanted to take." I looked at the box. Then, at her. "You packed my things, I started them. You were putting it off. And Friday is getting close. I told you I wasn't leaving." She exhaled hard. "You're being stubborn." "No." I reached into the box and took out the photograph first. "You stopped waiting for me to agree." Her face changed. Not much. Just enough for me to know I was right. I put the photograph back on the nightstand. Then the books. Then the shirts. Brooke stood in this doorway watching me unpack everything she had decided I no longer needed in my own room. When the box was empty, I folded the flaps closed and handed it to her. "Don't pack my things again." She took it, but did not move. "Adam is going to be furious. That's his decision. You're really going to blow up the whole family over a bedroom." I shook my head. "This stopped being about a bedroom when you decided my no didn't count." For once. She had nothing ready. I walked past her into the kitchen, and placed the original guest agreement on the table. Then I texted Adam. "We need to talk tonight. Both of you." I set my phone down and looked at the paper. For months, I had treated peace like something I was responsible for maintaining. That evening, I was going to find out what happened when I stopped paying for it. That evening, Adam came home 10 minutes after 7. Brooke was already sitting at the kitchen table with her arms folded. The empty moving box was on the floor beside her chair. I had placed the guest agreement in the middle of the table. Adam saw it and stopped. "What's this?" "The arrangement we all agreed to when you moved in." Brooke looked at the paper. Then at me. "Are we really doing paperwork now?" "No," I said. "We're doing facts." I waited until Adam sat down. Then I kept it simple. "You asked to stay here until your house was finished. We agreed it would be temporary. You found out 3 weeks ago that the move-in date had slipped by months. Neither of you told me. Brooke invited her parents here anyway. I told her my bedroom was not available. Today she packed my belongings after I had already said no." Brooke opened her mouth. I raised one hand. "I'm not finished," she leaned back. "I'm not going to an RV park. Your parents are not taking my room. And I am not agreeing to an open-ended extension of this arrangement." Adam stared at the agreement. "Dad, nobody said open-ended. You told me late September, maybe October. That's not forever." "No. But it isn't July either." Brooke shook her head. "This is unbelievable. My parents have flights booked. They shipped things here. You have a room they can use. And you're turning this into some kind of principle." It became a principle when my answer stopped mattering. She looked at Adam. "Say something." He rubbed both hands over his face. "Dad, I know we should have told you sooner. Why didn't you?" He looked at Brooke. Then back at me. "We thought the schedule might improve. That explains the first few days. What about the next 2 weeks?" He said nothing. I waited. "Finally," he said, "I didn't want another fight about renting a place." Brooke turned toward him. "Excuse me?" He kept looking at the table. "You were already stressed about the upgrades. The tile change, the appliances, everything was over budget. I knew if I brought up paying for a furnished rental, it was going to turn into another argument." I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger exactly. Clarity. "So instead of having that argument with your wife, you decided I would absorb the problem?" "That's not what I decided." "Then tell me what you decided." He looked up at me. "I thought you'd understand." There it was again. The word that had covered half our relationship. Understand. Meaning I would be patient. Meaning I would make room. Meaning I would not make him choose. I nodded slowly. "You were right about one thing. I do understand." Adam's shoulders loosened a little. Then I continued. "I understand that every time you were afraid to tell Brooke no, you counted on me to say yes." His face changed. Brooke pushed her chair back. "This is ridiculous. Adam is trying to keep everyone happy, and you're acting like he betrayed you." I looked at her. "You packed my clothes. I was helping. After I told you I wasn't leaving, you were being difficult." "No, I was saying no." The room went quiet. Brooke laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "So, that's it. My parents can just figure it out." "Yes. You're really going to make 2 people in their 60s scramble for somewhere to stay." "I'm not making them do anything. You promised them something that was never yours to promise." Her eyes narrowed. "You're choosing a bedroom over family?" "No. I'm choosing whether my consent means anything in my own house." Adam looked away. I slid the agreement toward them. "I'm not putting your things on the curb. I'm not changing the locks while you still live here. I'm not interested in turning this into a war. But this arrangement is ending." Adam looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means you need another housing plan. If you want a short transition while you arrange one, we can discuss that. But your parents are not moving in, and I am not agreeing to another 3 months of everybody deciding my house is the free solution." Brooke stood. "Fine." Adam looked at her. "Brooke." "No. He wants us out." "We'll leave." I said we can discuss a transition. "I don't need your transition." Her voice was sharper now. She grabbed the empty box from beside her chair. We'll get a furnished place. We'll pay for it. Then nobody can accuse us of taking advantage of anything. I did not answer. That seemed to bother her more. She waited as if I was supposed to stop her. I didn't. Robert. I looked at her. What, you're seriously okay with this? With you finding another place to live? Her jaw tightened. Yes. Yes. For several seconds. None of us moved. I think that was the moment Brooke understood the threat of leaving had no power, if I was willing to let her leave. Adam pushed back from the table. Can we not decide this tonight? Brooke was already walking toward the stairs. I'm done talking. A bedroom door closed upstairs. Not slammed. Closed hard enough to make the point. Adam stayed at the table. I didn't think it would get this far. I know. He looked exhausted. I was trying to avoid a mess. You didn't avoid it. You moved it. He looked at me. What, you moved the conflict from your marriage into my house? Then you expected me to carry it. He swallowed and nodded once. That was enough for that night. I did not need another apology before he understood what he was apologizing for. By the next afternoon, Adam had found a furnished 2-bedroom apartment 25 minutes away. It cost more than they wanted to spend, but it was available immediately and allowed month-to-month occupancy. Brooke signed the lease. That evening, for the next 4 days, they packed. I stayed out of the way. I did not hover. I did not inspect boxes. I did not remind them whose house it was every time they walked through a room. When Adam asked if he could borrow my hand truck, I said yes. When Brooke asked where I had put one of her storage bins, I showed her. A boundary did not require me to become petty, but it did require me to stop rescuing them from the cost of their own decisions. The groceries they bought were theirs. The apartment deposit was theirs. The moving truck was theirs. For the first time since they moved in, the inconvenience was landing where the decision had been made, on their last morning in the house. Adam carried the final box to his truck and came back inside alone. Brooke was outside on the phone. He stood in the entryway and reached into his pocket. Then he held out the spare key I had given him months earlier. For a second, neither of us said anything. I remembered the night I handed it to him. Your family. You don't need to knock. I had meant it as trust. Somewhere along the way, access had started to feel like ownership. Adam placed the key in my palm. We've got everything, he said. All of it. Yeah? And you're staying at the apartment now, he nodded. We moved the last bags over this morning. A few minutes later, he sent me a short message confirming they were fully moved out and had no belongings left inside. I saved it. Not because I wanted a case against my son, because after weeks of blurred lines, I wanted one thing that was clear. Brooke came in, took one last look around, and walked back out without saying goodbye. Adam paused in the doorway. Dad, get settled, I said. We'll talk later. He nodded. Then he left. I watched their truck disappear down the road. Only after they had moved out, returned the key, and confirmed the arrangement was over. Did I change the locks? I replaced the front and side cylinders and reset the garage access. Nothing dramatic. No audience. No victory speech. Just a house returning to one set of rules. By that evening, the old spare key no longer opened anything. For the first time in weeks, the house felt still. Not empty. Still. I made dinner, sat at my own table, and heard nothing upstairs. I thought that would be the end of it. Then Adam called. His voice sounded tight. Dad, there's something else. I leaned against the kitchen counter. What? Brooke never told her parents what happened. I said nothing. She told them you decided to spend some time at the lake campground so they could have privacy. I looked toward the downstairs hall. My campground. Yeah. And they still think they're staying here. A pause. Yes. When do they land? Friday afternoon. That's tomorrow. I know. I told Brooke we need to put them in a hotel. And she says once they get here, you won't turn them away. I looked at the new lock on the front door. There was the old assumption again. Wearing a different shirt, Brooke still believed my need to avoid a scene was stronger than my ability to hold a boundary. And now she was bringing 2 people, who did not know the truth, straight to my front door to test it. Friday afternoon came bright and windless. I spent most of the morning outside, replacing a weathered outlet cover near the back deck and tightening a loose hinge on the storage shed. Nothing urgent. I just needed something ordinary to do with my hands. Adam had called twice. The first time, he told me again that he had booked 2 rooms at a hotel near the highway. The second time, he said Brooke still planned to bring her parents to my house first. Why, I asked. She says they've been traveling all day and she doesn't want to explain everything in the airport parking lot. She had 3 weeks to explain it. I know. And she still thinks I'm going to let them stay. A pause. Yes. I looked across the lake. Then I guess she's about to learn whether she knows me as well as she thinks she does. I wasn't angry when I said it. That surprised me. A week earlier, the idea of Frank and Diane standing on my porch would have made my stomach tighten. I would have imagined every version of the conversation, every way Brooke could make me look unreasonable, every reason I might decide it was easier to give in. That morning, I didn't rehearse anything. The facts had already done the hard part. Adam and Brooke had moved out. They had returned the spare key. The locks had been changed. Her parents had never been promised my room by me. There was nothing left to negotiate. Around 3:30, I heard tires on the gravel. I was in the kitchen rinsing a glass. A dark rental SUV came down the drive first. Brooke was behind the wheel. Adam's truck followed 30 seconds later. I dried my hands and stayed where I was. Through the window, I watched Frank Mercer climb out of the passenger side. He was taller than I remembered, broad through the shoulders even in his late 60s. Diane got out more slowly from the back, one hand braced on the doorframe before she straightened. Brooke opened the rear hatch. 4 suitcases, 2 carry-ons, more than enough luggage for people who believed they were staying 6 weeks. Adam parked and sat in his truck for a moment before getting out. He looked toward the house. Even from inside, I could see he was unhappy. Brooke said something to her parents, then headed up the walkway with the confidence of someone arriving somewhere she still believed belonged to her. She reached the door before anyone else. I heard metal slide into the lock. Then a pause. She tried again. The old key turned part way and stopped. Brooke looked down at it. She pulled it out, checked it, and tried once more. Nothing. Frank came up behind her. Wrong key, no. She tried the handle hard enough that I heard it from the kitchen. Then she knocked. 3 sharp hits. Robert. I walked to the entryway. Before opening the door, I looked through the glass. Diane was standing a few steps back, tired and confused. Frank had 1 suitcase in each hand. Adam was near his truck, not moving toward the porch. Brooke knocked again. Robert, open the door. I unlocked it and stepped into the doorway. Brooke's eyes went straight to the deadbolt. You changed the locks? Yes. Her face flushed. My key doesn't work. That's what changing the locks does. Frank looked from her to me. Brooke lowered her voice. Can we not do this right now? They've been traveling since 6 this morning. I looked at Frank and Diane. Good to see you both. I'm sorry you got pulled into this. Diane gave me a tired smile. Good to see you too. Robert. Brooke stepped forward with her hand on 1 suitcase. Great. Then can we get them inside? Mom needs to sit down. I didn't move. The house isn't available for their stay. Silence. Frank frowned. What do you mean? Brooke answered before I could. We had a disagreement. No, I said. You made an arrangement I never agreed to. Her eyes snapped back to me. Robert. Frank set 1 suitcase down. I'm confused. Brooke said you offered us the downstairs room. Diane looked at me. She said you were spending part of the summer at a campground. There it was. The whole lie. Spoken in 2 calm sentences. I looked at Brooke. She stared back at me like she was warning me not to embarrass her. For a moment, I had exactly what she had counted on. An audience. 2 decent people who had flown halfway across the country, expecting hospitality. A tired woman who really did have trouble with stairs. A situation where giving in would make me look generous and refusing would make me look difficult. A month earlier, that might have worked. I looked at Frank. I never offered my room. He didn't say anything. I continued. Brooke told me I needed to leave before you arrived because she had decided you would use my bedroom. She picked an RV park for me. I said no. Diane's face changed. Frank looked at his daughter. Is that true? Brooke folded her arms. That's an incredibly dramatic way to describe it. Did you ask him to leave his house? Frank said. We were trying to make Mom comfortable. That wasn't my question. Brooke glanced at me. Then, at Adam. Adam agreed it made sense. Frank turned. Adam had finally walked up to the porch. He stopped beside the steps. Frank said, Did you? Adam looked at Brooke. Then at me. For most of the last few months, I had watched that exact moment end the same way. Brooke pushes. Adam looks uncomfortable. Adam finds the answer that creates the least conflict with her. This time, he didn't. Yes, he said. Brooke stared at him. Adam kept going. I agreed with her. Dad told us no. We kept pushing anyway. Adam. He ignored her. And our house is delayed. We knew that 3 weeks before we told him. Frank's brow tightened. What does that have to do with this? Adam shoved his hands into his pockets. We were supposed to be out of Dad's place in July. The new house probably won't be ready until late September. Maybe October. Diane looked between them. You told us you'd be moved into your new place by then. We thought we would be, Brooke said. Adam shook his head. No, we already knew we wouldn't. That was the first time I saw Brooke lose control of the room without anyone raising their voice. Her parents were not angry yet. They were worse for her than angry. They were trying to understand. Frank looked at the luggage. So, when you invited us, we're still living here. Yes, Adam said. And Robert had not agreed to us staying. No. Brooke threw up both hands. Can everyone stop acting like I committed some crime? His house has plenty of room. Mom has trouble with stairs. Robert likes camping. I was trying to make something work. Diane's expression hardened. By telling him to move out, I didn't tell him to move out permanently. Frank looked at me. What happened after that? I kept my answer short. I told them my room wasn't available. Brooke packed some of my belongings anyway. I ended the temporary living arrangement. They chose to move into a furnished apartment. They took their things, returned the key, and moved out. After that, I changed the locks. Frank looked at Adam. Again. Adam nodded. Brooke stepped toward the doorway. This is exactly what I didn't want. We can talk about who said what later. Right now my parents are tired and they need somewhere to stay. She put one hand out. Give me the new key. I looked at her hand. Then at her. No. Her hand stayed there for a second. You cannot be serious. I am. We're standing here with my parents and 4 suitcases. I can see that. And you have empty rooms. I do. Diane touched Brooke's arm. Honey? Stop. Brooke turned. Mom, please. No. Diane's voice was quiet, but Brooke stopped talking. Frank picked up one of the suitcases again. Adam, do we have a hotel? Adam nodded. I booked 2 rooms yesterday. Adam set one of the suitcases down and pulled out his phone. I already checked them in online, he said. The rooms are on the 1st floor. That detail landed harder than I expected. He had known this was coming. He had planned for the possibility that Brooke would refuse to accept my answer, and for once, he had made a backup plan that did not require me to surrender something. Brooke noticed it too. So you planned this behind my back? Adam looked at her. No. I planned for Dad to mean what he said. Nobody spoke. A week earlier, Adam would have softened that sentence before it landed. He would have explained, apologized, or found a way to make my boundary sound temporary. This time, he let it stand. Frank picked up the suitcase again. Good, he said. Then that's where we're going. Brooke spun toward Adam. You booked rooms I told you I was going to. You said that as a backup. No. I said we needed a hotel because Dad had already said no. She stared at him. The old pattern was breaking right there on the porch. Not because Adam suddenly became brave, because there was nowhere left for him to hide the cost. Brooke looked back at me. So that's it. You're really going to make my parents stay in a hotel when you have a perfectly good bedroom 15 feet behind you? I could have answered 100 ways. I could have reminded her that she had lived here for free. I could have listed every room she had taken over. I could have told Frank and Diane about the moving box, the lamp, the way she had spoken to me. I could have made sure they left knowing every ugly detail. For a few seconds, I wanted to. That was probably the first time in this whole mess I understood why humiliation can feel so tempting. When someone has spent months making you feel small, there's a moment of satisfaction in realizing you finally have the room. But that was not what I wanted my home to become. I looked at Frank and Diane. You two were put in a bad position. None of this is your fault. I'm not angry with either of you. Frank nodded slowly. I appreciate that. If you need a place to sit for a few minutes before you head to the hotel, I can bring chairs out here. I can give you directions. There's a good restaurant near the hotel if you haven't eaten. Brooke laughed in disbelief. Chairs. You'll give them chairs but not a bedroom. The bedroom isn't available. You keep saying that like it explains anything. It explains everything it needs to. Frank looked at Brooke. That's enough. She turned to him. Dad, no. We were told this was offered. It wasn't. I was trying to make the trip easier for you. Then you should have told us the truth and let us decide what was easy. Diane nodded. We would have booked a hotel ourselves. Brooke's eyes filled, but her voice stayed hard. So everybody's taking his side now. I almost answered. Then I stopped myself. There were no sides I needed to recruit. Frank and Diane were not trophies. Adam was not a vote. The only thing I needed from any of them was respect for a decision already made. Adam walked to the SUV and lifted 2 suitcases from the back. Frank took another. For the first time since they arrived, Brooke was the only person standing still. She looked at me. Then at the new lock. Then at Adam carrying her parents' luggage back toward the cars. That was the moment the power shifted. Not when I changed the locks. Not when Frank challenged her. When she finally understood nobody was waiting for her to approve what happened next. Adam came back for the last suitcase. As he passed me, he stopped. Dad. I looked at him. There was apology in his face. But I wasn't ready to make it easy for him. Get them settled, I said. He nodded. Brooke followed him down the steps. Diane paused before leaving. I'm sorry, Robert. We truly didn't know. I know. Frank gave me a short nod. We'll talk another time. That's fine. They walked back to the vehicles. Brooke got into the passenger side of Adam's truck instead of the rental SUV. Nobody slammed a door. Nobody shouted. Within a minute, engines started. I stood in the doorway as the cars backed down the gravel drive. Adam looked toward the house once before turning onto the road. Then, they were gone. I closed the door. The new deadbolt slid into place with one quiet click. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I stood there with my hand on the lock and thought about my son. Brooke had crossed the line, but Adam had spent months moving it for her. And telling the truth on one porch did not erase that. For the first time since this started, the question was no longer whether I could keep them out of my house. It was whether I could ever let my son back into my life without opening the same door all over again. For the first few days after Frank and Diane left the house, I kept expecting the phone to ring. It did. Just not from Brooke. Frank sent me a short message the next morning. He said he and Diane had checked into the hotel. The room was comfortable, and they were sorry they had arrived believing something that was never true. I wrote back that none of it was their fault. That was all. I did not explain Brooke to her parents. I did not send screenshots, timelines, or a list of everything she had done. They had enough information to understand why the bedroom was not available. Anything beyond that would have been punishment disguised as honesty. Adam called once that weekend. I let it go to voicemail. He said they were settled into the furnished apartment, and that Frank and Diane had decided to shorten their visit by about a week. Then he said, I know we need to talk. I listened to the message twice. I did not call him back that day. For months, I had trained myself to respond the second Adam needed something. A ride, a tool, a place to stay, a problem with a contractor. Even when he was 36 years old, some part of me still heard his voice the way I had when he was 12. Dad. Can you help me? And most of the time, I could. That was never the problem. The problem was how rarely I asked what my help was teaching him. Over the next week, the house slowly became mine again. Not in some dramatic way. I moved my chair back into the den. I returned a stack of Brooke's organizing bins from the pantry to the garage because she had forgotten them. I put my tools where I liked them. I stopped lowering the television because somebody upstairs had an early call. At night, the house was quiet enough that I could hear the refrigerator cycle on from the living room. The quiet felt good. It also felt sad. That surprised me more than anything. I had spent so much time wanting my space back that I had not thought about what would be left after I got it. Adam had been in and out of that house his whole life. His mother had taught him to swim off the old dock. He had helped me replace the kitchen floor when he was 17. There were marks on the garage wall where we measured his height every birthday until he stopped letting us. Brooke had crossed a line, but the person I kept thinking about was my son. I did not want revenge on him. I wanted to know whether he understood what he had done. The practical consequences arrived without any help from me. Adam and Brooke now had rent on top of the mortgage they were preparing to carry once the new house was finished. They paid their own utilities, their own groceries, their own moving costs. I heard through Adam that Brooke was furious about how much the delay was costing them. I did not offer money. That was new for me. Not because I wanted them to suffer, because the financial inconvenience belonged to the decision now. For months, every delay had somehow become a reason I should give more. Now the delay was simply theirs to manage. Frank and Diane stayed at the hotel for another 12 days. Frank texted once more before they flew back to Arizona. He thanked me for recommending the restaurant near their hotel and said he hoped things settled down. I told him I hoped so too. Brooke never contacted me. I was fine with that. One evening I stood in the entryway and noticed the little brass hook where Adam's spare key used to hang. For years, I had barely seen it. It was just part of the house, like the light switch beside it. Now the empty hook caught my eye every time I walked past. I left it empty. I did not need a symbol to punish anybody. I just needed the reminder that trust and access were not the same thing, and that one could be repaired before the other was restored. About 3 weeks after the confrontation, somebody knocked on my front door just after 6 in the evening. Not a key in the lock. A knock. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Adam stood on the porch alone. No Brooke, no boxes, no request in his hands. He looked tired. "Hey, Dad." "Hey." He glanced at the new lock. Then, back at me. "Can we talk?" I opened the door wider. "Come in." He stepped across the threshold slowly, almost like he was entering somebody else's house. Maybe that was not a bad thing. We sat at the kitchen table. For a minute, neither of us said anything. Then, Adam looked at his hands. "I owe you an apology." I waited. He took a breath. Not just for the thing with Brooke's parents. That mattered. I knew the construction delay was bad. I knew we were going to need more time. And I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right moment to tell you. He shook his head. "I wasn't." "What were you doing?" "Avoiding Brooke." He said it without looking at me. Every time she got upset about money or the house, I tried to solve the problem without making her mad, and most of the time, that meant asking you to bend. I stayed quiet. He looked up. "You were always the easier person." That sentence would have hurt a month earlier. Now it just sounded true. Adam swallowed. Every time I was afraid to tell Brooke no, I told myself you'd understand. I made your patience pay for my cowardice. There it was. The thing I had been waiting to hear. Not, "I'm sorry you got upset." Not, "Things got out of hand." He finally named what he had done. I leaned back in my chair. "You did." He nodded. "I know." We sat with that for a few seconds. Then I said, "I need to own something too." He looked surprised. I should have drawn the line sooner. "Dad." "Brooke was the one. I know what Brooke did." I held up a hand. "This isn't about splitting the blame evenly. It isn't even close. But I spent years making things easier for you because I thought that was what a good father did." Adam looked down. "When your mom died, I probably got worse about it. If I could fix something for you, I fixed it. If I could absorb a cost, I did. I looked around the kitchen. And somewhere along the way, I taught you that Dad would absorb it. Adam's eyes were wet, but he did not look away. I'm sorry. I believe you. That was not the same as saying everything was fixed. He seemed to understand that. He told me he and Brooke had started marriage counseling. Not because I demanded it, because their argument after her parents arrived had exposed things they had both been avoiding. Brooke was angry that he had contradicted her in front of Frank and Diane. Adam was angry that she had expected him to keep lying. I did not ask who was winning. Marriage counseling was their business. What happens with you two is between you and Brooke, I said. He nodded. I know. But what happens between you and me changes too. His shoulders tightened. What do you mean? I mean, I love you. You're my son. You can come here. We can have dinner. We can work on things. But I'm not going back to the way it was. He looked toward the front hall. The key. The key is part of it. He nodded slowly. I did not reach into a drawer. I did not hand him another spare. That was important. Not because I wanted him to feel excluded. Because the old key had represented a kind of access neither of us had been careful with. This time, I wanted the relationship before the access. We talked for another hour. Nothing dramatic. The contractor. The apartment. A problem with one of the cabinets in the new house. Normal things. For the first time in a long while. Adam did not ask me to fix any of them. When he finally stood to leave, I walked him to the door. He paused on the porch. Dinner next week, call me. He smiled a little. I will. Then he walked to his truck. I watched him drive away and close the door behind him. The lock clicked. This time. The sound did not feel like keeping someone out. It felt like knowing I could choose when to open the door again. For a long time, I thought being a good father meant keeping the door open no matter what. I was wrong. Helping my son was never the mistake. The mistake was letting repeated accommodation become something everyone expected, instead of something I chose. That spare key had once meant trust. Then, little by little, it started to mean access without permission. Now Adam knocks. And when I open the door, it's because I want him there, not because anyone assumes they belong inside. Brooke taught me something I probably should have learned years earlier. When people never hear the word no, eventually they can start mistaking your kindness for consent. I still love my son. I just finally understand that love doesn't require surrendering your place in your own life. What would you have done in my position, and where would you have drawn the line if this story stayed with you? Subscribe for more stories about family, boundaries, and the consequences that follow when respect disappears.